WRKS Pickens Jackson.
Are you ready? Yes!
Now live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the BankPlus Studio.
You are
listening to
Mississippi's #1 sports talk show, The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming worldwide live on the Out of Bounds radio app and on your radio at ESPN 105.9. The Zone.
Ole Miss 55, LSU 49. That's in regulation. Incredible. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN, brought to you by the Amazing Steaks and Bourbon and Wine Selection, Kessler Prime and the Renaissance, KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. We're live in the BankPlus Studio. And again, we're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. Want to welcome you in on a Monday. Huge weekend for Ole Miss. As man, what a week! What a week can do for a coach. All I heard last week was how bad Lane Kiffin was. Our text line was flooded with Ole Miss fans, frustrated, and now he's the best. So we welcome in Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, the Ole Miss Spirit. Jake joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Jake, do you think this is Lane's biggest win since taking over at Ole Miss?
I think so. I mean, with the, just the tradition that is LSU and this rivalry that, Ole Miss kind of considers LSU that second, right, 1B, 1A rivalry, depending on what fan you ask, between, them and Mississippi State. And we knew coming in how good this team's supposed to be, and they showed it Saturday night. I didn't really believe the shootout aspect, and I just didn't know that the Ole Miss offense could keep up with that. I knew what LSU was going to do and could do with Jane Daniels, and he put on a tremendous performance. But I just, after seeing what Ole Miss did at Alabama, and that offense just disappeared, just vanished, I wasn't expecting it. But, yeah, no, I think this was probably Lane Kiffin's best week of practice and planning. And then obviously this was the biggest game of his Ole Miss career win. I know the signature win is a subjective kind of discussion point depending on the eye of the beholders type thing. And people have said, what about the Tennessee game a couple years ago and when that shootout 2 years ago against Arkansas at the time when Arkansas was, how they were then. But I think this is the biggest one. If it wasn't last week, this was going to be the second chance for him to kind of have that big win this year, just seeing how these other future SEC teams or opponents have kind of fared to start the season. This LSU was the one he needed to get for this season to kind of stay on track.
I thought the difference was, well, there were several. I mean, I know Jaden Daniels' turnover in the red zone was huge. But as the game unfolded and the momentum swings and the back and forth, I thought the difference was Lane Kiffin was the best play caller in the stadium. And he continued to play and call the game aggressively. And I thought LSU went conservative. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, they tried some stuff and kind of took what the defense gave them, and they finally got the run game going. And not just Judkins. Bentley got some play calls through in there, that long touchdown run he had in the first half when, Ole Miss kind of at point had broken serve and had that kind of extra touchdown lead until LSU caught up to him. But I think the play calling did look much different. Now, we'll never get a true answer out of Lane, and even if we ask people, we'll never get an answer of was it him more or was it Charlie Weiss more?
Lane Kiffin calls the plays.
Yeah,
100%.
I think we all know, but we'll never get anybody to actually tell us. But I think we all saw Saturday who's calling the plays at least this week, because they constantly were moving down the field. They didn't really stagnate much unless LSU just made a great play or a penalty, a holding call or a penalty slowed them down. So it was a much different looking feel, and it just looked like an offense that even Jackson Dart was more comfortable in than even a week ago. And that's not even talking about the Alabama defense. Just in their own little bubble on their side of the football, Dart looked much more in control and confident and comfortable than he did a week prior.
Yeah, and we knew the LSU secondary wasn't any good, but their front was considered good. And how about the way that Lane schemed, what the offensive line did, and Judkins and Dart taking advantage of that with no sacks, and what Judkins did on the ground?
Yeah, I think, we Kiffin obviously got beat up the most, kind of the outside noise, as they like to say, all week. But the second probably group that did or has been all season, because they haven't really, this was probably their best game up to this point, was the offensive line. And Kiffin noted he was hard on them. He was hard on a lot of different groups this past week, but offensive line was kind of at the top of everybody's list of asking, what did you see? What did you do to kind of transform in a week? And, maybe Kiffin got a little more involved in that room. That's not really his thing, is to get in there with the linemen and scheme, but it seemed he did this week. And for the LSU defensive front to just be a non-factor in terms of getting in the backfield, for Dart to have 0 sacks against this group was shocking and impressive. And, now you got to see if it can continue. That's the thing after kind of games like this, and the week like this past week is, within 7 days, the range of emotions that those people in that building went through was a lot. And so now let's see how they go. But that was probably the best that group has looked since maybe before the skid last year. Before that, from the Alabama game to now, this was probably the best game they'd looked last November.
I agree. Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, the Ole Miss Spirit, talking Ole Miss with their big win over LSU, and 55-49. And Ole Miss dominated the fourth quarter, 21-7. They got 2 stops on defense, and Lane never checked up as far as offensive play calling. Harris was brilliant. Pre-scoring looked good, but I really thought the fact that Judkins had the day really made it all, I guess, made the sunshine come through and made it all happen, because you needed him to have that type of day if you're going to go to a really good bowl game.
Yeah, no, you needed him to make that defense honest, because the defenses have kind of known all year Judkins just hasn't had it, and Bentley hadn't really had it minus flashes and here and there at times in games. But for Judkins to almost double his season total on his own in one game, that's just what's massive for this offense, because it opens up the passing lanes, the short passes. I think they still got to somehow get these receivers to create a little bit more separation. There seems to just be, always seems to be jump balls, one-on-one balls when Dart's going longer than a slant route or something like that. So that's still something these receivers have got to work on. But if Judkins can get that run game going, it's going to make the linebackers and even some of the secondary have to keep that on their radar again and help maybe free up some of those one-on-one passes. But that was massive, and I think that's also a credit to that, what we were just talking about, the O-line, helping create those lanes. And it was kind of shocking, because you wouldn't expect the 2 best games. Well, I guess you would, but from what we've watched, for Judkins to finally just come out of nowhere and have 2 of his better games, maybe not number-wise at Alabama, but how he looked, how he ran the ball, and then what he did against LSU, I guess,
health,
better late than never.
Yeah.
And he is healthy, and maybe, he is still young, and, those injuries, especially if it was kind of a rib chest injury when you're a running back, I mean, you got to be thinking that in the forefront of your head, I'm about to get hit where I'm hurting the most. And so I'm sure that was also a hindrance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jake Thompson, Ole Miss Insider, talking Ole Miss LSU, and Lane goes from, really bad Lane to the hero in 1 week. Now you're almost a 2-touchdown favorite. I've only got about a minute, but against Arkansas. How do you see this one, Jake? I don't think there's any way Arkansas's D can slow down the Ole Miss offense.
Yeah, I know, whenever these two get together, it's never gone well in Fayetteville in recent history. But at Ole Miss, 2 years ago, it was like the game we just watched. It was a shootout. I think 51, 52, 52, 51, something like that.
That's right.
And I think it's major for this to not have a letdown. But this offense, if it can click like that, from what little I've watched of Arkansas at times on these past few Saturdays, I don't think Vegas is too far off at the moment. We'll see how it goes the rest of the week.
I agree. I'd lay the points. Jake Thompson, thanks, man. It's going to be a big week for y'all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Ole Miss 55, LSU 49. Paid off. Lane, the best play caller in the stadium. Most of the time, that pays off. Pete Golding, second best play caller in the stadium. May not have looked good for a while, but 2 stops in the fourth quarter, you'll take it. And Ole Miss with the dub. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit, talk SEC, power rankings, and national championship. And then Steve Robertson at 8:30 on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line.